Hey everyone, it's Kirk Mastin here at Mastin Labs, and welcome. We are about to do a video on getting beautiful skin tones in your digital images. So I've got a bunch of images from our community, from the website, showing all kinds of skin tone so that I can help you get beautiful skin tone for your clients. And basically, it comes down to just a few things to get beautiful skin tone. The three things you need to consider are light, which preset you use, and how you adjust your white balance and tint. So the first thing to consider is light. If you shoot someone and they're backlit versus being an open shade, meaning that they're not backlit or frontlit, it's just like under an eave or something where the light is even, or if they're in full sun, that is going to radically affect their skin tone. Often when people are shot backlit, they can look gray, like there's no color in their skin at all, compared to shooting the same person in full sun where you have hypersaturation, lots more color, and it's just a whole different ball game. And open shade is just kind of the easiest one to shoot in. But I'll show you some examples from each one of these. And then you've got things like indoor tungsten light, dappled light and all that. All that makes a huge difference. The second part is which preset do you use? So different analog films were really designed for different types of skin. Some films were not designed for skin at all. They were designed for landscapes. And so they're going to make landscapes look really good and super saturated and vibrant, but they might make your person look like an Oompa Loompa, which you don't want. We'll go through some of that too. And then the last part is white balance and tint. Ah, yes, so simple and yet so hard to master. White balance is pretty easy. It's just cool or warm. Tint is a whole nother ball game. That is magenta or green. And let me tell you, if you can nail tint, it's going to make everything so much easier. Big adjustments for cool and warm, small adjustments for tint. So I'll show you what I mean now. Oh yeah, one more thing. I'm just going to go over our Mastin Labs 3-step workflow for you real quick. And this is part of like everything we do. This is how you're going to see me edit, but it's just 3 steps. You apply the preset. That gets the image into the right color palette and micro contrast range. Then you're going to adjust exposure. And this often means increasing exposure, as most cameras try to protect the highlights when set on auto exposure. And exposure is also where you're going to tame contrast and kind of do major global adjustments. And then the last part is white balance and tint. This is where beautiful tones of all kinds come into play, whether it's skin or landscapes or foliage, all that stuff. So let's get started. I tried to find a good group of images here from different types of skin, different types of lighting situations, and I'm going to try to answer your questions as I go too, as to how I would approach each one of these. So let me start with this image first. One question I get often is, what do you do when you have 2 completely different skin tones in the same photo? Do you edit for one and not the other? Is there some kind of magic trick? It's kind of a combination of things. So like in this photo here with Melissa and Daryl, we've got actually pretty nice lighting, conditions. This is open shade. You can see that, their bodies are in pretty even lighting. There's a little bit of side light coming in from the side, but the shadows are opened up in her eyes and his eyes. There isn't like extreme contrast on their bodies. The background is all blown out, but that, we're at a lake in the middle of winter, so what do you expect? When I go to edit a photo like this, I am trying to split the baby. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but I'm trying to get just kind of a middle ground that satisfies both skin tones. It's possible to dial in both equally well. I mean, we are just showing emulations of real film, so it's going to do what the film would do. This particular image, I think, would benefit from something out of the Adventure Everyday Original Pack or the Fujicolor Everyday Original Pack. These films are like the Swiss Army knife of films. They look good on a lot of things, and you've got a look in here that will work for everybody. But let me go through them with you. So, for example, Gold 200 from Adventure Everyday Original will give them a nice bump of contrast, color, and all that, where I can get both of their skin tones to look pretty good. I applied the preset. Gold 200 is known for its greenish bluish shadows and warm skin, so you can see immediately that it's introduced those colors back here. And after applying that, I'm going to look at the exposure, temperature, and tint. So exposure wise, I think these could come up just a little bit. And then as far as skin tone goes, I'm going to start with temperature, which is warm and cool, and get that dialed in first. I'm going to warm up the image a little bit. Melissa is a very, or at least in the middle of winter, is very, very, very pale. So I want to add a little bit of warmth to her skin with the slider. And then Daryl, he's looking pretty good. I don't want to go too far or else the whole image becomes really yellow. And then I'm going to go down to the tint slider, and that's kind of where you get your best skin tone adjustments. So looking at them right now, I'm going to say it's a little bit green. The tint slider is already at -17. That's what the camera decided. Doing auto exposure. So I'm going to just increase the amount of magenta a little bit until it feels good. So I increase it like 10 points. I don't know, right about here. If I go too far, the place where I'm noticing it starting to look really weird, of all places, is the mountain back here, behind them. Okay, if I go up too far with tint, too magenta, it just starts to turn magenta, like the highlights and everything, and that means that I'm kind of approaching my maximum. Like if I go up to here, it's starting to get really kind of purple. So I'm going from -17 to, I don't know, +5. It's not a gigantic jump by any means. I mean, this slider can go really far either way, but that seems about right. Okay, let me show you before and after. As you can see, both their skin tones look pretty good. This is just one film out of many, many, many films that we emulate, but it's built for situations like this. I might go actually a little bit back towards green, just a few points, now that I see it. There we go. At this point, one other thing I might do is do highlight soft, which is a tone profile, and tone profiles are extra tools that we include with every pack that let you do global adjustments on contrast, either in the highlights or shadows, without kind of drastically changing the whole image. So in this image, I'm going to hit highlight soft, and as I mouse over it, you can see just the highlights are being tamed a little bit, a lot more details coming in. You can see Daryl's face opens up on the side, and then the mountain scene in the background, there's a lot more detail. So I'm just going to do highlight soft, and I'm going to call that good. The reason this was, I think, a good example of dialing in skin tone is like what I said at the very beginning. I'll just go back to there real quick. Is the light is open, like open shade on them. Yeah, the background's a little blown out, but so what? But it looks good on the majority of the photo. I chose Kodak Gold 200 from the Adventure Everyday pack. It's a super versatile look. It's not overly stylized. It looks good across a wide range of skin tones. And I was super careful with the white balance and tint. And you can see the final image looks good. Let me show you, just as a counter example, another preset or another film that would not look as good on this photo. So that's kind of weird. Let me show you something that doesn't look good, as good. I'll make a copy real quick. Okay, now I'm going to go to Portrait Original. And I'm not saying Portrait Original is bad by any means. It's one of my favorite packs that we make. It's really, really great. However, it is not the best on darker skin. So if I do, say, Portrait 400, and then go through my adjustments again, so I applied the preset, going to increase the exposure a bit and then dial in the temperature. So I increased it last time. I'm going to do that again. And the image needs to be a little more magenta. There you go. And I'm going to do highlight soft. Boom. Actually, it still looks pretty good. So I may be eating my words here, but often Portrait 400 has too much orange in it for darker skin tones. However, it is really, really nice on super incredibly pale people like Melissa. No offense, Melissa. Just super pale. And it's the middle of winter. Let me get these a little bit closer in exposure. So there's Daryl with Portrait 400, and then Melissa, and then here is with Gold 200. And it's, actually in both cases, they do look pretty good. So, I shouldn't complain either way. But in general, I often tell people to stay away from Portrait 400 or Portrait 800 on darker skin because of that orange factor. It's holding up pretty good in this image though. All right, moving on. Now, what if you have someone who is in harsher lighting, like, more front lit? What do? This is where getting the exposure right or adjusting exposure is really important. And then also using the tone profiles to control contrast. So on this image, I'm actually going to go back to the adventure every day. I'm going to use Ektar. Now, Ektar is the most saturated, contrasty, colorful film that we emulate, and actually in real life, like the actual film is one of the most colorful and saturated. And you would think it's kind of crazy to use it on an image that's already contrasty, but I find it actually works really nicely if you massage it a little bit. So I increase the exposure a little bit here. I'm going to warm it up. And it's a little, let me see, I think it's just a point or two too magenta. So we'll just go down just a tiny bit. Yeah, this image is like crazy contrasty, right? That's because I use a very contrasty film on a very contrasty lighting situation. But if you do all soft, you can bring up the exposure again because it's protecting the highlights. There's a little bit of like super hot highlights on the specular parts here. Specular meaning anything that goes to pure white or close to pure white. So say like the tips of a wave, like in the ocean, where it's reflecting a lot of light. That's sometimes considered a specular highlight. On her head, where it's a little bit shiny, it's starting to go to white. But overall, it looks super good. And the last thing I'm going to do is do lens correction and see if I can straighten out the corners and get rid of that vignetting. So in this case, I have found personally that the red and orange, not the orange, but the red in Ektar is really, really nice on darker skin in full sunlight. So again, it's a very fun, colorful, kind of summery image. It's a super easy edit because I picked, and it feels counterintuitive, I picked a very contrasty film and colorful film for a very contrasty and colorful image, but I used the tone profile to kind of even it out. And I also used that tone profile so that I could increase the exposure more. The way that we've built everything is based on a model of color negative film. So everything that we emulate is based on that. And what's cool about color negative film is that unlike a JPEG or even a RAW file, a normal RAW file, is that with film, with color negative film, it's very hard to blow out the highlights. And we've done that inside of our presets and styles. We've created that model where you can increase the exposure, bring out detail in the shadows, even out contrast without blowing out the highlights. If I hit the J key, we can see I just hit it. There's absolutely nothing in this image that is pure white. And I could probably go even a little bit further, like to there. She's starting to get a little bit bright here. I liked it a little bit darker. But the way everything is built is that you can actually increase the exposure quite a bit and preserve all the detail in the image. And that is a really good trick to getting good skin tone. Sometimes people will purchase and then be unhappy with their purchase because they don't understand how they're seeing all the beautiful work in the community that they're seeing like all the time, and they're not able to do it. And often it's related to not adjusting exposure. So if I was to just leave it how it was when I first applied it, it would be this dark. And I agree, it doesn't look good. But the key in some situations, especially hard light, like front lit like this, is to feel comfortable to pull that exposure slider up. And if you reach a point where you feel like you can't pull it up anymore without blowing things out, that's when you jump in and use a tone profile on the side. So don't forget you have those tools. They're really important tools. The tone profiles come directly from the film scanner that we use to make everything, and they're included for film for a very specific reason, which is to also do the same thing, to extend the dynamic range of actual real film to deal with really bright situations like this. We give you the same power in Mastin Labs with our modular preset system. And as you can see, all the edits are super easy. Preset, exposure, white balance tint, and then a tone profile as like an optional fourth step to just kind of help with tricky situations. So I hope that's helpful so far. All right, let me get back to my images here. Okay, so we also have situations like this. Let me hit the J key. So his pants aren't blue anymore. That's because they're clipping the pure black. So this is a raw file. It's shot inside by a window. We've got, kind of a bright outside environment, very dark inside. This is very typical for a lot of family photographers. You're shooting inside. It can be this way, and you don't have any kind of fill light or anything. In this example, let me see, what am I going to use? Let me go to Fujicolor Everyday. I don't know, these two packs are on my mind lately. Like, if you don't own anything that we make yet, like you're just like thinking about diving in, the Adventure Everyday pack and the Fujicolor Everyday pack, they are the Swiss Army knives of what we offer. Like, they suit almost anything. So my mind tends to go to them. The other packs that we have, like Fujicolor Original, I mean, that is like for light and airy wedding photography or light and airy stuff in general, like super light and airy pastel. Portrait is for like primarily Caucasian people in flatter light, and they're very kind of specialized. The everyday packs, either one of them is great when you don't know where to start and you just want a really beautiful photo. So with Fujicolor Everyday, this situation, you could pick either of the two color films that we've emulated, and they're going to look good. So let's see. C200 is a little more yellow, and Superia is a little more red. Let me just mouse over them and see kind of where I want to start. Yeah, you can see C200 a little more yellow, Superia 400 a little more red. Superia 400 also has a little more contrast. And the greens in C200 are a lot, I don't know, bluer or greener. We don't have much green in this photo, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go with Superia 400. Now, this image looks fine. I mean, if you wanted to deliver it as kind of a dark and moody image, you could. This is with, whoops, let me reset it. This is with only just applying the preset. So this is before, and this is after. But I can take it further and make it a little bit nicer. So I'm going to increase the exposure just a little bit here. I want to be able to see this little girl's face and a little bit more of their faces too. So I'm increasing the exposure. And now like in that other image on the beach, I've kind of hit the ceiling of like things blowing out, like, you know, it's getting more difficult to go higher in exposure. That's when I go into the tone profile to extend it. So I'm going to extend that using probably highlight soft or all soft. If I check really quick, I hit the J key. Oh, I still haven't blown out the highlights. Great. Anyway, forget the J key. If I want to extend this a little bit further, I can do either highlight soft. So as I mouse over that, you can see the snowbank or whatever that is outside kind of dim down a little bit. Or I could use all soft, and that brings out a little more information in the shadows. So let's see, what do I want? I think all soft actually. So this is Superior 400 with all soft, little exposure bump. I haven't touched temperature or tint. Frankly, it looks like really good as shot. I don't think I'd gain anything by messing with that. There's quite a bit of noise in the image. Like if you go down to his arm or like her face, I'm not a huge fan of just like digital noise. This is shot at ISO 4000, and we had to bring it up about a stop, so that's why we're showing noise. One thing you can do to deal with noise, and this has nothing to do with skin tone exactly, is you can use one of our grain settings. So we've included 35 millimeter grain and medium format grain, and what's nice about it is that it covers up digital noise. Again, I know it sounds crazy. Like, why would you cover noise with noise? Because it just is more flattering than digital noise. So if I go down here and just crank up the noise reduction a little bit, I don't know. I never go too far with it. I don't want people to look like they're a melting plastic doll. But about 30, 32 is good. If I take it to here and then add 35 millimeter grain, there we go. Or even the medium format, but I'm going to do 35. If I add that 35 millimeter grain, it's randomized like film grain. I'm not sure if you can see it in this broadcast because, you know, we're recording it compared to the screen, but it's way more pleasing, especially when you print an image like this really large. So that is my edit for this image. The red in Superior 400 is really, really nice, again, for like tan or darker skin. So I think it works really, really well for this. And I don't know why I'm seeing like not the before in this example. It's kind of frustrating, but I'll just do it manually. So here's before, and here's after. And it's a really, really nice edit. So really good skin tones. Nothing is like overly stylized or weird. It just looks natural. And we've kept the dynamic range, the micro contrast, everything looking like film. And that's the goal. Okay. So let's do something with the light and airy crowd. So this image comes from a styled shoot that I did quite a long time ago out in the desert. And this has all the makings of a good light and airy photo. It's just one out of a whole session. But in a light and airy, we have a whole nother video about light and airy, and you should watch it if you haven't seen it. It's in our library. Check it out. It's been viewed like thousands of times. And I go over how to set up a light and airy shoot. But the takeaway here is I put them in open shade. They're wearing very neutral clothing. I mean, white. That's about as neutral as it gets. The neutral light, neutral skin tone, neutral everything, open shade. They are ready to roll with light and airy. And so now I'm going to choose the right preset for them from Fujicolor Original. I'm going to apply it. And then all I need to do is bring up the temperature, or let me see the exposure. I'm going to leave the exposure, bring up the temperature a little bit. And I think they're a little magenta, so I'm going to drop that a few points. There we go. And then I'm going to use Highlight Soft to try to bring back some detail in these white outfits they've got. There, that's perfect. Awesome. Super easy. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So let's show the before and after. Again, well, I'm getting like a weird before. Okay, don't worry about that. Here is the before, and here's after. And if I go back to my skin tone guide, they're in open shade, so I got the light part how I want. The preset part, I picked Fuji Original. It is made for light and airy photography of any skin tone. And then the last thing is white balance and tint, which you saw me adjust. So with those three powers combined, we have really, really beautiful skin tone. Okay, let's do something indoors with this very, very underexposed image. So this image is a little bit different. I'm going to break out of my three-step process, and I would normally strangle someone who broke out of the three-step process. No, not really, but I always tell people just follow the process until you know it, and then you can break it. But in this case, I'm actually going to break it because it's so underexposed that it's hard to even know what I'm working with here. So I'm going to, before I even put a preset on it, I'm just going to increase the exposure so I can see kind of what is going on. Okay, so seeing what is going on, I am now going to look for a preset or style that complements darker skin, shot indoors, high contrast, using window light. Those are all the things in my mind, like I'm checking off, going like, what is going to look good? And I'm going to say, I think Superia is going to look really good. Or C200. Let me try both of them. That's too yellow. Redder. Okay, redder. Is redder a word? More red? It's more red. So Superia 400. Actually, you know what? It's too much contrast. I'm going to take that back. I'm going to go with maybe like Fuji Color Original. Let's try 160 NS indoors. There we go. That looks nice. What does 400H look like? No, 160 NS, nailed it. Okay. Let's talk about 160 NS for a second because not many people use this film or preset. 160 NS was a film that Fuji made that was super low grain, really, really nice for portraits. It emphasizes pink and cyan. Neither color is really in this photo very much, but the pink-red aspect of 160 NS is nice for darker skin. Again, it's kind of like makeup. You want to find the right undertone for the makeup that you put on. So if you think of the presets as makeup, the tone of 160 NS complements skin that already has a little bit of red in it. So I applied it to this. It looks pretty good. I'm going to increase the exposure. Let me see here. I'm going to actually increase the tint just a tiny bit towards magenta. I mean, just the smallest amount. I can't emphasize that enough. When you adjust tint, just be super careful. You're doing like 1 or 2 points, 3 points, not a bunch. In temperature, you can go a little more, buck wild with because most people can see warm and cool very, very easily. I'm going to go just a little bit warmer. All right. And a little bit more magenta. There we go. Okay, so this looks really nice. I would be totally happy to deliver this. Here's the before. Here's after. If I wanted to take this a little bit further, say I wanted to decrease this fall off from her head to her hair, where it's just kind of like blocking up, it's just turning totally black at that point, you can't see any detail. I would use like shadow soft. Yeah. And it's just a tiny little bump in the shadows. So if I roll over it, it's kind of hard. It might be hard to see at home, but it's just kind of evening out that contrast a little bit in the shadows. And in fact, after applying that, I might go up in exposure again, just a tiny bit. There we go. So there you go. That is before and after, indoors with window light in a high contrast situation. So I hope that this was very, very helpful to everybody. As you can see, I'm just using those guidelines that I put on the skin tone worksheet at the beginning. You want to have the right light. Light is kind of one of the main considerations. You want to have the right preset. That is something that we discuss and talk about a lot in the group, in the Facebook community, the Mastin Labs Facebook community. But we've also written about it on Photoism, which is our blog. We have other videos too, going over every pack specifically and like kind of deep diving into every look. But a lot of this is going to come from trial and error. And it's kind of like building a toolbox. You can't build an entire house with a screwdriver. Like you need a saw and you need a hammer and you need power tools. That is the way that I see actual real films and presets and styles. You will not be able to find one thing that's going to work for everything you do for the rest of your life. You're going to need a few tools. And a good way to start, I think, especially if you're new to Mastin Labs, is pick one of the everyday packs. Either one. I mean, they're like some of our best sellers. People love them. They're super versatile. Pick one of those. And then if you want to like fine tune the rest of your toolkit, then you would pick like Fuji Original if you're light and airy type of photographer, or like Portrait Pushed if you're a dark and moody photographer, and that will fill it out to where you can handle any kind of situation, any kind of skin tone, and put it inside of the type of photography that you enjoy most, which is like light and airy or more neutral or more dark and moody, and that is how you build your toolkit. And then if you're a super intelligent, awesome, amazing photographer, of course you're going to add Ilford, because you'd be crazy not to, because then you have the power of like the best black and white emulations on the planet in your toolkit too. And then you're going to get hooked on black and white, and then we'll see you later. You'll have a dark room and you'll just be nuts. It's going to be good. Okay, so to wrap this up, thank you again to the community for images. We love them. If you're not already a part of Mastin Labs, the Mastin Labs Facebook community, join us on Facebook. Just search Mastin Labs community. Come on in. I don't care if you own anything that we make or not. We're here to help you. We want you to succeed, and we're here to answer questions and edit your raw images so you can see if it works for you. You can also message us directly. You can slide into our DMs by just going to m.me/Mastin Labs, and we will personally answer your questions. If you're seeing this on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button and hit the bell so you don't miss anything we make. Super important. And yeah, that's about it. Oh, one more thing. We've got Instagram effects. They're free. Just go and follow us on Instagram, Mastin Labs. Click on one of our stories. Inside the story, you can swipe up and get a lot of these looks for free for your Instagram stories. It's awesome. We've got over 11 million captures or impressions or something at this point. It's only been out for like a week. Go get them. They're amazing. Until next time, take care and happy editing. We love you guys.